Hello again. Today I'm going to do my May wrap-up. It's a little bit late, I'm sorry about that. The books that I read at the beginning of May seem like a long time ago, so if I don't say much about them, it's just because I've read a lot in the meantime. So the first book that I read in May was Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. Kate Atkinson has just released a new book called A God in Ruins, and that is a companion novel to this one. The main character of this is called Ursula, and we see lots of different iterations or possible lives that she leads. There are lots of turning points in her life, and we get to see how things would have played out if she made different decisions. This is very innovative fiction. I've never read anything quite like this. This idea of many possible lives seems to be an interesting trend at the moment. Some other novels that do the same kind of thing, and I'm quite interested to pick those up. Next I read The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl by Issa Rae. This is a set of essays that are autobiographical, telling various different stories about her life. If you recognise the title, it's probably because there is a YouTube series of the same name. If you like the series, then you'll love the book. I haven't seen all of the series, but I did really enjoy this memoir. So if you enjoyed reading memoirs by the likes of Tina Fey or Mindy Kaling, then you will probably enjoy this as well. The next book is along similar lines. It is The Fictional Woman by Tara Moss. The interesting thing about this is that Tara Moss is a model, and she's a model turned writer. So she has some really interesting insights into how she's perceived by people when she says that she's a model, or when she says that she's a writer, or if she says that she's a writer when people know her as a model. I found this to be a really well-written book. It goes into depth on a breadth of topics, and I think it's a shame that this isn't better known actually. Yet another fantastic memoir that I read was Just Kids by Patti Smith. I enjoyed this book so much. There's just a wealth of inspiration and information on creativity and trying to make it as an artist. I know that I read this at the right time as well, because I'm at the stage where I'm not quite sure how to get where I want to be. Moving to a big city and trying to make it as a creative is exactly what Patti Smith was doing and what she is talking about in this memoir. It's also heavily based around her relationship with Robert Mapplethorpe. I'm sure you all know most of this already because it's a very well-known book, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Initially I rated this as 4 stars, sort of 4.5, but I've put it up to 5 because I can't stop thinking about it. As you probably guessed by now, I'm really into the memoir essays written by women, and the next one is no exception. It's Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this nearly as much as the others. I think it's because there's less sense of continuity in this collection. These are various pieces of non-fiction that she's written over the years. They're much more journalistic than some of the other essays that I've read, which is fair enough, Joan Didion being a journalist, but it just didn't click with me in the same way. Some of the essays I really didn't enjoy. Some of them were alright, and some of them I enjoyed, but in general, it just didn't gel for me. Next I read Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. I did really enjoy this one, but I feel like reading it as an audiobook maybe wasn't the best way of doing it. It took me quite a while to figure out what was going on, and I'm still not quite sure that I got it. I think seeing it in print, you could flip back and see what happened earlier on and sort of piece it together a bit more. It is one that I want to reread though, because I loved her style and I loved the sort of fairy tale references in there. It's weird and wonderful and all this magical realism, and yeah, I really did enjoy it, but I want to reread it. Next was yet another memoir. This was The Folded Clock, a Diary by Heidi Julavitz. I don't know if it's just because I've read lots and lots in this sort of genre recently, but to me this was a bit blurry. I recall really enjoying this, but I can't say exactly why. And I'm really annoyed with myself for this, so I will have to reread it at some stage. There are some great anecdotes in there though, and quite a bit about gender roles, so that was right up my alley. Then I read The Death of the Heart by Elizabeth Bowen. I would say that if you like Edith Wharton and Virginia Woolf, then you will probably really enjoy Elizabeth Bowen. This is the first book of hers that I've read, but those were the sort of vibes that I got from it. This is a sort of love story or betrayal story. It's a coming-of-age tale, and like I say, it's similar to Wharton and Woolf, so it's not the most uplifting of stories. Next up I read Pain, Parties, Work, Sylvia Plath in New York, summer 1953. So I just had to glance at the screen to make sure I was getting the title right. This is by Elizabeth Winder, and is a biography of Sylvia Plath, but as the title would suggest, it really focuses on her time as an intern in New York City in 1953. This is a particularly interesting time in her life because she used it as a basis for her novel The Bell Jar. And this paints a really interesting portrait of Sylvia. This is before she went to Cambridge, before she met Ted Hughes. It's really about her being an ordinary young woman. And the author has interviewed a lot of people who knew her from that time, and we get a really different side to her. She comes across as really vivacious and loving life, but still a troubled soul. And I think this book does a really good job of having that balance. So if you've read The Bell Jar and want a bit more insight, then this will be a great book. If you're a fan of Sylvia Plath, just want a bit of a different perspective, then I would definitely recommend this one. In my childhood, I never actually read the original J.M. Barrie story, Peter Pan. So I thought I'd better remedy that. As most people probably are, I was pretty familiar with the story. I've seen various film adaptations of it, and I've also seen it on stage. Aside from the obviously problematic colonial aspects of it involving the Indians, I thought that this was really delightful and I really enjoyed reading the original. I also found the ending really moving and really sad because the ending doesn't seem to be used in films and adaptations of it. And there's this reflection on mortality and what it means to grow old that provides yet another level to the story that we all know. Another classic that I got to was The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This was a little black classic and I got through it pretty jolly quickly. Read it at an airport, in fact. This is a very unsettling story about women and madness and how women were treated when they were considered mad in the 19th century. This is usually cited as a key feminist text, and I would definitely agree with that. It covers a perspective that is usually overlooked in literature. Here we actually get to hear from a mad woman in the attic rather than looking at her from another perspective. Then I read a piece of New Zealand literature which has had an international readership. This is The Chimes by Anna Smale, and it is available here in the UK. I actually heard Anna Smale talk at the Auckland Writers' Festival, so that added a sort of extra layer to my understanding of this. I have written a full review that will be up on Goodreads very soon. This is set in a futuristic dystopian London where everyone is controlled by this powerful musical instrument. It's all very, very vague at the beginning, and I love what she does with language. She uses a lot of musical terminology, and it's just lyrical and foggy and vague, a bit like The Buried Giant in some ways, where you're not quite sure what's going on and you feel like you're inside the minds of the characters because of this fogginess. So that's the first half of the book. There's very little plot. It's just setting the scene, getting a sense of this world. The second half of it, though, really changes tone and the pace picks up dramatically. While we do get to find out what happens, and it all happens very quickly, we sort of lose out on those beautiful lyrical passages that we had in the first half. I've read a few reviews of this on Goodreads, and it seems that a lot of people liked either the first half or the second half, and most people like the second half. So I'd say that if you're more of a YA reader, you'll really like the second half and might struggle with the first half a bit. If you are more of a literary reader, then you'll probably really enjoy the writing in the first half but might not like the second half so much. I did feel like the ending was a bit rushed, but I'm certainly keen to see what Anna Smale does next. So if you're looking for some contemporary New Zealand literature, I would really recommend that you check out The Chimes. Then I read Mrs. Dalloway, which is a book that I have been wanting to read for years and haven't quite got round to. I really loved this. I mean, it's Virginia Woolf. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as To the Lighthouse, which is one of my favourite books. And I'm sort of torn between 4 and 5 stars for this one, just based on my enjoyment of it, not based on how amazing it is as a piece of literature, because if I did that, then it would obviously be a 5-star. Anyway, I'm sure you don't need me to ramble on about Mrs. Dalloway because this video is getting really long. And I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and oh, this book, I knew it was going to happen. I've read the Iliad, but this was particularly sad because it's written from the point of view of Patroclus. If you haven't read the Iliad, Patroclus is Achilles' sort of right-hand man. He's his best friend and lover. So this is the story of their relationship. There's a bit of a Romeo and Juliet type thing going on because Achilles' mother really doesn't like Patroclus. I love the way that this was written. I'd say that if you're into classics, then this is one that you should definitely read. Next, I read The Liar by Stephen Fry. As one would expect, this is fantastically hilarious and just so Stephen Fry. I mean, it's so absurd, but so wonderful. Quite a bit of it set in a university, which was the reason that I picked up this one. So yes, if you like reading about overprivileged white boys, then this is a great book. If you're wanting something comic but with literary references coming out of your ears, then this is the book for you. I have an actual physical book here that I brought with me because I recently finished this and I was reading it on the planes. This is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. The first Jeanette Winterson that I've read, but it will not be the last because this was fantastic. It's about a young girl called Jeanette who is adopted and her parents are very, very religious. And so when she figures out that she is gay, things go a bit sour. There's a mixture of sort of folklore and fairy tale in there as well. And I just love the way that she writes, so I would definitely be reading more Jeanette Winterson soon because I brought some of her novels with me. Sabrina from Unmanaged Mischief was reading 1Q84 for her Murakami of the month, so I joined in reading this as an audiobook, and I must say this is one of the more enjoyable Murakamis that I've read. I do really enjoy Murakami, but I was getting a bit fed up with some of his tropes, and particularly the way he depicts women. This book, however, did everything that I thought Sputnik Sweetheart was going to do. It has really well thought out female characters. It has a narrative from Aomame's point of view, and she's one of the two main protagonists in this novel. There are lots of conversations between her and other female characters, and all of the female characters in this are very distinct, different personalities, and they're diverse and interesting and have their own inner lives and backgrounds. And so I really, really enjoyed this. The first two books were incredible. The last book I had some issues with. It didn't quite sit so well with the others, but when I heard him speak, he actually said that he wrote the first two novels and then realised that he wanted to expand it out into a trilogy. He had more to say about these characters, and I'm really glad that he did, because if he'd finished after book two, it would have felt very abrupt and not finished at all. I was quite pleased with what happened in the final part. Not everything was explained, but I wasn't really expecting them to be. So if you want a bit more in-depth analysis of this book, then I would direct you to Sabrina's channel. I will link it below. She's done a great video review and analysis of this. And I've just looked at my list and realised that that was in fact the last book that I read in the month of May. I've read a few books since then, but I will talk about those at the end of this month. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye! Thank you.